Thank you both for joining us today. And I'm sure you all have heard and are aware, because it's everywhere around the building, it's the 50th anniversary of KACo. And I feel like the last several years that we have been able to work with you all in leadership have been a very successful time for counties. And you have given your time and your efforts to listen to not only Shellie and Jim and our legislative staff, but also to our individual members throughout the state. So we truly appreciate that. We know your schedules are very busy, and you're going to be gaveling in on January 7th, which, do you keep a countdown clock?
I'd be afraid I'd burn it down.
So we thank you all, and for everything that you've done, from annexation to discussion with jails, to the state budget appropriations. It means a lot, because it's not just our local officials that recognize that, but we get to go back home and give credit to you all of doing those things for us. So I'll tell you how many days it is. It is 54 days. So you can look forward to that. What I'd like, if you all don't mind, if you could each provide some insight into your caucus, what you're looking forward to, and your caucus priorities for the upcoming session.
Me first?
Sure.
Well, first of all, David is in a little bit different position than I am, because he's got his leadership elected. So I'm certain that they're probably already starting to talk. We will do that tomorrow in the Senate. And then our group we have a small caucus retreat that whoever is our leaders, and we know we're going to have some new ones, at least one new one. We'll sit down and kind of talk through that. But I think the first thing that we will do is do something very much in concert with the House and David, is set up a time frame to do the procedural necessities to reduce the income tax from 4 to 3.5. I think that's probably, we're in agreement lockstep. We might not be able to get it done in the first week because of the way the Constitution is, but I have a funny feeling that it may come out of the House flying, and when we return 1st of February, it'll come out of the Senate smoking.
You know, with 80 members, or 100 members in the total House, we don't focus quite as much on priority bills numbers as the Senate does. But I will tell you that House Bill 1 will likely be the income tax reduction bill, and that will likely be the first thing that we do, and will likely come out of the House on Thursday of the opening week of session. Beyond that, I think if you're looking for priorities, look at the interim. You know, for the last several years, we've used the interim very successfully and very intentionally, both through our normal interim joint committees as well as the task forces that we've appointed. They've been very productive, very successful, and have yielded a lot of really intentional and good legislation. I actually believe, you know, we say this every year, and then somebody sets their hair on fire. I actually believe that this will be a session that is much more in keeping with the original intent of the short session. You know, we've had some pretty aggressive agendas in the last several short sessions because there was a lot to do. But at some point in time, I do think it's important that we look at the things that we've done. We've made a lot of good policy. It doesn't mean it can't be made better. So I think we'll continue to evaluate those things, see the tweaks that can be made, and just continue to improve the environment in Kentucky.
I think that's a great plan. I want to congratulate you, by the way, on getting elected to your 4th term as Speaker. Very happy to have him continue at that helm. So, on the heels of Secretary Gray, let's talk roads and bridges. It's a little bit of an important topic to the folks that I represent. As you all know, out of those 80,000 miles, we're responsible for 40,000, for half of those, and a third of all the bridges that our folks use. We know that the state motor fuels tax is the main source of revenue for counties and local governments. Counties get 18.3% of that. Of course, we've got technology ever evolving. You've got electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles, all sorts of things on the horizon. I'm wondering what you all envision for the future of transportation funding. I feel like we're at a bit of a crossroads for both the state and local levels. I know everybody's got maintenance needs, state and local government. So, Speaker, we'll start with you.
Obviously we've been talking about kind of a broken formula in how we fund our roads for several years now, with the advent of both hybrids and fully electrics, the more fuel efficient cars that are on the roads, doing just as much wear and tear to the roads, but not generating the income. And I think that there are two things to look at in there. One is the actual formula itself, which we've tried to make some tweaks to capture the electric vehicle fees that were not captured previously. Still needs to be some more done. That's going to be a formula that continues to evolve over the years as we see how quickly the electric and hydrogen market evolves. The other thing that we've done, and we've been very intentional about it, is returning the monies that for decades have been siphoned out of the road fund for other purposes. And we put over $100 million back from general fund into the road fund by formula. And then also we showed this past year clearly the intention of continuing to adequately fund our roads when we, in House Bill 1, put over $400 million of new dollars, general fund dollars in it. So clearly a commitment to continue to upgrade our infrastructure in Kentucky, and a priority item when we have those dollars available, but it's going to be an evolving process.
President.
Yeah, this is something I've been talking to this group about, EVs and hybrids. Shoot, Reagan, 8 or 9 years, back before you were even here as the chair.
When he had hair.
Yeah, when you had hair, yeah. That was a long time ago. But no,
I think that's a bad joke too, right?
I thought it was pretty good. Hey, but I'm going to say this. We're about this process, and it's not about trying to come up with an ends that everybody is agree. It's because you'll get that if you go through process. And this is one of the great things I think right now that you're seeing in the legislature is we're going to look at this, and I truly believe markets dictate where things will go. And I think this next administration, I'm not trying to be political. I'm just saying this next administration is going to have a totally different viewpoint. And I think this country will probably come down landing more on hybrids than they will EVs. And so figuring out what the appropriate formula is and having good policy discussions behind that, you'll then get a good policy conclusion. And so we are to a certain extent able to move forward on our own, but we do have to react to the realities of the federal government. But the working relationship we have, and that's why I think it's really good right now, because I think you're seeing us come with some really good budgets, really responsible, when we're dealing with our pensions and everything else, you're seeing that reflected. And I think because of our ability to cooperate and collaborate, we'll come up with a good result that people, you may not like it. Not everybody's going to like everything that we do, but if everybody can understand it and think that, hey, it's here, they appreciate the realities of it. It's a tough subject matter.
It is.
And energy, to me, is going to be a huge discussion for the next 8 or 10 years.
Well, thank you. And one thing that we all understand is the bridge program that you all started and the county priority projects program. Thank you so much for that, for giving us such a voice in that and being able to submit those projects. And we certainly appreciate that. We appreciate that nod.
Yeah. So economic development is obviously a top priority for not only at the state level, but at our local county level. And the investments that you all have made in House Bill 9, the grant fund for local governments, the Kentucky Product Development Initiative funds, and as you spoke about the reduction in the state income tax, those are some really forward-thinking ideas that have not come forward in the past in Kentucky. And so we greatly appreciate those on the local level. But from your perspective, from the state level, a lot of times you may not get the legislature doesn't get the credit that it deserves for the policies that it passes to help us move forward and to help our growth. But in your mind, what are some of the wins that you see that have been fantastic, not only for the legislature side that you can check off that what we've done, but what has been a big win for the state level that is moving our Commonwealth to another level?
President.
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, one, our fiscal responsibility, and I'm going to disagree with you on this. You said these forward-thinking ideas have not come up in the past. I think they have. And until David Osborne and his group got into the House and control of it in 2016, you didn't see these things come to fruition, because many of the policies we would pass out of the Senate year after year, and then they go to the House and die. But we are the ones, I think, a good win was the fact we're being responsible with our pension systems. We're looking at how we become more competitive regionally, and I'm not talking about, I'll use Reagan again, Madison versus Fayette. I'm talking about Kentucky versus Tennessee, or Kentucky versus Indiana, Ohio. We're becoming more competitive because of our tax code, because people know that they're not going to get hit with a big bill because of our pensions. We're investing in the things that make a difference, be it roads, water, any type of infrastructure. We are very much business-oriented in our policies. And this is one, I don't know if the speaker is, but when the environmental cabinet is getting ready to hit the coal industry and the gas industry with regs that are costing the regulatory permitting process to go up 17 times over what they are, we're going to look at things like that in the future. But I think it's a whole series of economics, and this is where David and I are probably more uniformly aligned. We believe in economics. Economics changes everything. Less use of jails, broken families, drug use and addiction. If you have good jobs, good opportunity, you're less likely to do these things. So we've had big wins all the way across the board when it comes to anything related to economics and management of our budget, which was reflected most recently by Moody's giving us one of the higher ratings we've had in years.
Speaker.
Yeah, I will agree with Robert that these aren't new ideas. We are finally just in a financial position where we have the ability to implement a lot of things that the people have talked about for years. I mean, I think the biggest win is the fact that we've got the biggest large budget reserve in state history, one of the top 5 budget reserves in the country. That gives us an opportunity to act quickly and act with significant impact. You look at our ability to use cash for the grant program. You look at our ability to make almost $2 billion of investment in House Bill 1. Those are done with cash. We've never been in that position before, and that's not been an easy thing. There's been lots of money floating around, especially when the federal dollars came down. We were actually chastised for not spending enough, and challenged to be bold and spend more. And we've made investments where we felt it was appropriate. We've tried to focus our budgeting on needs and not wants. And by doing that, we've been able to make the investments we've needed. We've also been able to make investments in the taxpayers of Kentucky by returning, after this tax cut, over $1.8 billion a year back into the pockets of hardworking Kentuckians. And one of the significant challenges that is starting to address, that every business and every entity in Kentucky and all over the country faces right now is workforce. And we now know, and which is one of the reasons that we did our tax reform package the way we did, to focus on employee wages, individual income taxes. We know that tax reform is job creation, and it is happening. We're seeing net inflows of dollars. We're seeing net inflows of workers right now, and that all goes back to that premise.
Can I add one other thing to this?
Of course.
And we've hit a little bit different things, but they all play into each other. As Damon Thayer walks out the door, he was a person who came with the idea that to get our tourism up and running again, we needed to invest $75 million in a media campaign. Now, I'm looking at Dan Mosley and Ray Taylor here. Now, Dan Mosley needs a lot of help in the tourism area. But when you think that it was us, the General Assembly, that said, we need to do this, and yes, we are having record tourism now, that's because we put $75 million into a tourism ad campaign that has paid off tremendously, especially in the rural areas.
Definitely. As Judge Mosley shakes his head, strong yes. Certainly over my time representing counties, jails have been a constant topic of discussion. And it's an evergreen issue, obviously, for us. And it's been called Groundhog Day, but it is. I mean, it's a topic that comes up. It's the biggest financial pressure point for the people in this room, certainly for their budgets. We've had blue ribbon commissions, we've had task forces. This has gone so far back that I remember when you were just a senator and just a Majority 4 leader. So it's been a while that we've been trying to fix this issue for the state and for counties. Could you all share your thoughts maybe about where your chambers, your members might be looking at where Kentucky and counties can go in this shared responsibility that we have? It's a job for county governments, it's a job for the state to do, but there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just budgets, it's the people that are in there that we're trying to get out there and make productive citizens once again, and it impacts the whole family. So you all could talk about that. Speaker, we'll start with you.
It's interesting. I was actually thinking about that when I drove in because I knew this topic would come up, certainly. And going back 19 and a half years ago, right after I was elected in a special election, my very first committee meeting was a local government meeting in this room before it was redone. It was when we did a lot of committee meetings on the road, and I had to listen to then Senator Julian Carroll give the history lesson, which he always did at every meeting. He gave his history lesson, but he gave the history lesson on why the jail system was so dysfunctional and such a problem for counties. It's been talked about at every year subsequent to that, and I'm sure before that even as well. We've done a lot of important things, I think, in the way we've structured government and the efficiencies we've achieved in government. Difficult things that were not necessarily slam dunks as far as getting all of our members together on. One of the things we've come up short on, and it's not because of the lack of trying. We've now had 2 working groups working through the interims on them. We've just not come to a place where we feel like we have resolution on the jail issue. We've tossed some additional monies at it, which I know is helpful, but it doesn't solve the issue. And there's so many opinions on what should ultimately happen with the jail, and all of them pretty logical, with the exception of just throwing more money at it. And my personal opinion on this, after looking at it for several years, is I think that there's got to be ultimately some state involvement in the jail process. I don't know whether that means state takeover, state administration, but some type of state involvement. And that you look at the efficiencies and the differences in jails across the Commonwealth. There are some jails that it costs twice as much to operate as some of the newer, larger, more efficient ones. Counties can't be expected to continue to shoulder that. And if there is some type of a state supplement to that, the state can't be expected to pay twice as much in one instance as they can in another. So I do believe that there's going to have to be a modernization of the system. That causes a great deal of consternation in some areas, and I understand that. Change is difficult. Change is not something we've run from, but we've tried to, when we've tackled big issues, we've always tried to make sure that if we're going to do something, if we're going to tear something up, let's make sure we do the best thing possible. And in most cases, we've done that, and we've just not found that answer yet on this issue. So we'll continue to work on it, and hopefully an answer is around the corner soon.
President?
Yeah. When I was just a state senator and just a judiciary chairman, we've taken bites out of this apple various ways. Lee Wolf and Owsley went to a regional concept, and we used cold severance to build that facility for them, and I think it's worked out well to minimize theirs. I think there's two data points we need to look at. And we've tried to do some things. I think it was Senate Bill 90, looking at alternatives
Right.
to sentencing, where you go through an intensive substance use disorder program. We've got some data coming back on that instead of incarceration for those people in non-violent situations. And you have to explain that. But, oh, you're not going to put a rapist or a murderer or axe-wielding crazy person back out on the street. No. But for those people who have gotten addicted and could be incented to go a different direction instead of incarceration, let's see what that data point is, because that's the volume or a lot of bulk of what counties have. That's not necessarily the biggest cost driver.
Right.
And this is something I asked for data on, and hopefully we'll get data, is that individual, and I just saw my county judge just White, we were talking about this, he's had somebody down there for like 2 years on a death penalty case. That's a cost driver. And that person becomes more unhealthy. And then you start getting into health care costs. And I think a few years ago, I think it was about 18 or 20 years ago, we started that catastrophic medical fund
Right.
to try to relieve some of those cost pressure points for jails. But is there something we could do for those Class A capital offenses that will have long-term incarceration pre-adjudication, to where maybe that is a subset as a large or as a small group, but a large cost driver be transferred to state control? And I think because the state has better medical facilities and better resources to deal with that individual, whoever it may be, for that long pre-adjudication period, we take those. And that would be a small group, but in a subset, but a large cost driver.
And we'll get that data. I think that's due next year.
Yeah.
It's October in 25.
Right.
I think that'll be a big help.
Okay. This ties into what you were just talking about, the opioid crisis, and the impacts it's having on Kentucky, not only from our jails, but an economic standpoint and the workforce. The settlement payments have begun to be dispersed across the Commonwealth and to the Commonwealth. Are there any projects in particular that you all, as the legislature, would like to see done with the 50% that comes to the Commonwealth? President Stivers, if you want to lead.
Well, both of us have been around a long time. Y'all look at me like I've been around a lot longer than anybody else. Gee whiz. But I've been at this a long time from not just a legislative standpoint, but from a lawyer. And identifying those individuals and programs that are working. You know, that so many people, because there's so much money, have just jumped into this field and they think a 30-day detox program works. Now, this is a lifelong experience. You know, I so firmly believe in it. My family has donated our old family home to be a transitional house for pregnant women who are detoxing and rehabbing. And so we need to look at those alternatives that truly make a difference, not something that's just a money generator for a business. So value-based contracting, something of that nature, where it's not based on the person, but based on a result. So I think we need to start talking about that. And I'm going to say this, and one of the biggest things I think out of this last election, and if you talk to law enforcement, is this is something that the feds can help us with, and it's controlling a border. Because if you read any of the articles and talk to law enforcement, yeah, we need education, we need intervention, but that intervention and then interdiction, we've got to stop the source, wherever it may be. And if you've read articles, it's one of the reasons Louisville has become such a hub, because it comes across the border, then comes to a regional distribution point, which is Louisville. And so that's something I think we have to look at all facets of it, but that's something there's going to have to be a lot of interlocal and intergovernmental cooperation, because you're not going to stop it with just one type of, oh, we'll do education or we'll do rehabilitation. You've got to take an approach that deals with all sectors of the problem.
Speaker.
Not a lot to add on that, but as a follow-up on that, I do think that it's important to realize that these are effectively one-time dollars. This is not something to build a business model on. This is not something to be experimental with. This is an opportunity for both state and local governments to make some real solid long-term impacts on the problem. Let's use it wisely. We've seen in the past where we've had state governments as guilty of it as local governments are, probably more guilty, where we've seen some inflows of large amounts of cash, haven't been administered very well in the past. And I'm pretty optimistic about the things that I'm seeing, the applications that I'm seeing, that the attitude toward this is much more intent on making long-term change.
Definitely, and I think that's the same attitude that our folks have, that they know it's one time. It's I don't want to say it's a trickle, but it's a small amount over a long period of time. And they are very conscientious of that. And so I think that's pushing them to work together, not just with you all, but with each other and their nonprofits, that whole community that's trying to solve a very, very large problem.
As well as KACo.
Definitely. Lauren Carr, we've got our own opioid settlement advisor. She's doing a fantastic job. She's from Graves County, and she stands at the ready as well. She's been very helpful so far.
I'm going to try to.
Yeah.
David is so right that this is one-time dollars. It'll run out in 14 years, 18 years, something like that. It'll be greatly reduced after the first 4 years.
Right.
But I think, David and I have these discussions, and we have, I don't think I'm reaching any confidences here, but we get together just ourselves and talk about things. If you want to talk about long-term solutions, I'm going to go back to what we first started with, our budget, economics, things of that nature. And I think, again, and I don't want to speak for him, but that's where we believe if you really want to shut down or close down or reduce opportunity to commit crime, be in jails, look at substance use disorder, create a better economic dynamic, give people jobs, opportunity, and education, the skills to go out and get employed.
Yeah.
Not saying they won't, but they are surely less likely. Not that means we aren't socially oriented and aware of the social issues, but you cure a lot of the social woes if you cure a lot of the economic problems.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Is there anything else that you want to ask?
I don't think so.
Any closing thoughts from either one of you? How excited you are that the session's only 54 days away? Yes.
And you're not going to have this many legislative items in this short of a time. You are really
bubbling
focused.
over inside. But I did look forward to it. If you can't get excited about session, then you don't need to be in the legislature.
Right.
It is, it takes a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress and a lot of time. But it is also when we finally get to do what we do, and that is to make policy. And I do believe that this session will be a more traditional short session. Doesn't mean that we won't tackle some very difficult issues, but I do think it'll be a more traditional session. Clearly glad to have elections behind us. We got our leadership elections behind us. We return with 80 members in our caucus, but a lot of new faces on both sides of the aisle. Be interesting working with a completely new minority leadership team.
Right.
None of those leaders returning. And they had a really good leadership team.
They did.
They had developed a very, very good, mature leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be an interesting process getting to know new leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
I'm going to say two things. We just elected a city guy down in the 29th, but I'm going to call out two county judges, Albie Brock and Dan Mosley, who helped elect him. So if y'all got any problems with the city guy, you need to call those two. But on the other hand, I have to tell this story on Albie. He kept sending me a text saying, in my humble opinion, I finally had to send him back a text, ain't nothing humble about you, Albie. But in all this, I want to say this. The last 8 years, and I think the reason we are on such a good trajectory and why I enjoy the process so much more is because I have a good partner and colleagues down in the House, because we've really made a huge difference since we've been able to control the policy setting process, and that is what the legislature does. The governor only executes, as you heard. Secretary Gray on what we send them to do.
Very good.
Yeah, and I'll go back again that the legislature and the leadership does not receive enough kudos throughout the state, because I think that our constituents don't really realize the work that you put in. They think you go up there for 30 days, 90 days, whatever, and you come and meet some in the summer, and they don't understand that this is a job that you take home with you and take to your regular day jobs and all that stuff. So we truly want to express our thanks, and especially I think when you all come and do these with us in front of all the county officials, it really humanizes the positions that you are in, and it shows your caring and your pointed direction that you're working to get the state to take us forward and to be a better Commonwealth and to work for all people, not just your districts, but all people. And so we really appreciate that. And also the open door policy that you have with us and the KACo advocacy team.
It's because you have this superstar legislative person.
Jim, way to go, Jim.
So we look forward to this short session, and
We do.
yeah.
We do.
So it's always a pleasure to be able to come over and sit with the legislators and with you all. And
We do have one more thing we want to do real quick. Every year, as our members know, and a select class of legislators know, we reflect back on every session, and we give out a County Advocate Award for those who work on behalf of counties in the legislature. It is a long slog. It takes a lot to get a bill through. And there are some tough issues that counties have to deal with, and it makes it very hard on them to try to find a way to assist, again, not just their own counties, their own districts, but all of you all as a state. I mean, we've got sheriffs, jailers, PVAs, coroners, the whole gamut, county clerks, circuit clerks, that we come to them individually with your own associations and collectively under the KACo umbrella. And so we would like to present that to you all today to thank you so much for everything you've done for us this last legislative session in 2024. It was definitely a very hard-fought and interesting one. So we want to present both of you with one of these to thank you for this, and hopefully you'll hang them in a prominent place in your office.
President
Thank you,
Stivers.
sir. Appreciate it so much.
Sure.
Thank you. We'll get a picture together. Is that okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
There are lots of plaques and awards that go around the halls of Frankfurt after sessions, but this is definitely the coolest plaque.
Oh,
It really is. It
Thanks.
is. Now my second one. Which
I know.
Happy
Keep it
to-
up and you'll get a third.
Right. But
So we
it
take a picture.
Yeah, we'll take-
really
you
is
wanna-
one of the more unique
Oh, good.
awards
Thank
out
you.
there. So
We're
thank
pretty
you.
proud of them. Where do you want us to look? Closer together. I'll swap. I'll swap. There you go.
You're right, this is one of the cooler ones.
Thanks. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.